going to get into all the issues concerning education, attainment, and we don't want to waste any time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We love to start our sessions by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge all of our ancestors and those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stewards whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. As I said, we have a remarkable group of panelists today. We're going to have them introduce themselves, and we'll start with you, Camesha.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Camesha Cox. I'm the founder and executive director. Been doing this work for 12 years. Started in the Kingston, Galloway, Orton Park community with community-based literacy programs. And we're now, as an organization, scaling the work that started in Kingston, Galloway to various communities across the country. And I'm sure I'll have an opportunity during today's panel to share more specifically about the work.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. And Shakara?
Hi, yes, my name is Shakara Joseph, and I am the CEO of Junior Achievement of Nova Scotia. We focus on youth education and literacy, financially, specifically entrepreneurship and career readiness. I have been in the educational space for the last 15 years and really focused on sort of Black and racialized individuals' participation in entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship education. I'm excited to be on this panel and learn from all of you as we, try to unpack some of the things that we know are the realities of Black learners or racialized learners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate that. And Mr. Jones, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sounds good. Devon Jones. I'm a veteran school teacher with the Toronto District School Board. I've taught school for over 2 decades. In different capacities. I'm also the founding director of YAAACE, that's the Youth Association for Academics, Athletics, and Character Education. Looking to share more of what YAAACE does in the education space around our community school initiative, which focus on addressing the gaps in achievement in the evenings and weekends by identifying struggling learners achieving below the provincial standards and closing those gaps in achievement.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Devon, if you want to let us know what inspires you most about the work that you do.
Yeah, I think the work that we do in community around building capacity in children and youth, it's inspirational because you can change life outcomes and you can change trajectories. I mean, I've worked in the Jane Finch community for over 2 decades. So you see the implications of students who are not achieving or who haven't had great experiences in the school system. And you see the scathing rates of attrition and where those young people end up in the wrong system. So the work drives us because we can genuinely change the life outcomes of children and youth by providing them with ecosystems that's conducive to them being productive members of the larger social fabric. So that drive, I know that's a passion of mine, and that completely drives my team and myself.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Camesha, what inspires you most about the work that you do?
The most is the impact. Whether it be the Reading Partnership for Parents program that's teaching parents how to teach their kids to read and walking them step by step through that process, and seeing parents come in, not really knowing how to approach teaching their kids to read, and at the end of their time in the program feeling empowered, understanding that they are a part of their child's learning, and seeing their child read and knowing that they help to create that impact. And then, having the same families come back with younger children because of the impact of the program, or 360 Stories, which is a program that basically turns kids into authors at the tender age of 9. And we're talking about kids who are, reluctant writers, right? They don't want to write, but with the support, they get to write the story they want to tell and see themselves as authors. And then when you talk to them at the end of the program, they're excited to talk about the next story that they're going to write for writing. So there's just, it's really the impact of the program and understanding how important literacy is. Like, it's the thread that weaves through everything. And we need to ensure that kids get the start that they need. And that's what we're focused on, and knowing that we're achieving those kinds of outcomes, that kids are getting the start that they need, that parents are getting the support that they need to support their kids, makes it really worth it and is inspiring.
You mentioned the 360 program. Is that open for the public? Is it something that you can share? If you guys are going to mention any amazing programs that are open, if you can go ahead and drop the links in the chat so everyone can follow up on that, we'd really appreciate that. And Shakara, if you could let us know what inspires you about the work that you do.
Yeah, very similarly, it's the student leadership that I see on a daily basis. It's turning those initial sparks into that capacity to really co-author or author their own realities. I'm on the other end of the spectrum, so my beloved young ones are preparing for university and opening up their minds to what could be possible and how they could change and transform the future of their families. Most of the programming that I have, we never just focus only on the student themselves. We are always looking to how do we enrich the support that is around them. And so when we look through the company program, it's an entrepreneurial experience, but we're always looking like, we know that the students are deeply connected into their community. So how can their community support their entrepreneurial learning or their workplace readiness learning in an environment that actually helps them not only survive, but thrive and grow? The other programs that really inspire me are the ones where the unexpected happens. So where you see those students who have been written off by the school system as, less than, having them come to a moment where they realize their brilliance and it's so unexpected. And we are all just so excited about it. And teachers say, well, I did not know that student could be what they are. And I'm so inspired by those moments. But obviously I know through the rest of this conversation, we'll talk about more things that will continue to inspire us.
Yeah, we'll get right into it actually. You can go ahead and answer this, Shakara. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of things were obviously upset. What promising models are you aware of, or innovative ways have you guys come up with to sort of pivot to still help build capacity for the students?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I'm sort of the most proud of that I've seen happen is we do have, and this is actually one of the only spots I play with the younger students, we do have this program that really has helped P to grade 2 work on handwriting as a form of cognitive capacity building. So what we saw was with the students being at home and parents having to navigate, educate from home experiences, many of the young ones weren't used to being in those sort of fixed educational experiences. And so what this program does is it actually takes the art of handwriting, which, everyone who's gone through a cursive experience knows how it puts the hand to brain capacity. Like it's starting to move that neurological. I now understand that by moving this shape, this makes this sound. And it was developed by one of our Black educators here to help P2 students really start to find the mechanism to get introduced to schools in a way that seems really non-threatening. What it's done for young people, these little ones, is really just bring that confidence to the table, which we all know as a learner is more confident, they will have more success, they will be willing to take risks, and that starts at that young age. And so this handwriting program has really just been something that we started at a pilot school that's now moving into the entire Halifax School Board.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Devon, do you have any innovative ways, new models that you're using to help pivot and build the capacity of students since the pandemic?
Yeah, so initially we started out with an amazing partnership with Spirit of Math. Spirit of Math it's a private entity, but we built this amazing partnership with them where we had our students working with them as part of a research project that I'll share later on in the chat. And the objective of this was to address the levels of achievement for Black students in math. So the data is telling us that only 17% of Black students are achieving at the provincial standard in mathematics, which is so at the grade 9 level, only 17% of Black students would pass that proficiency test, right? Which is quite problematic for us. So the partnership with Spirit of Math was to explore addressing those gaps. And what we found from that initiative was the fact that it wasn't an issue of capacity at all with these students. It was an issue of content, right? It was the content that was delivered to them, the way it was delivered to them in school that was the problem, because the Spirit of Math initiative, and it's quite structured. Everything is structured. The resources they use are structured. Assessments are structured. Lesson plan, lesson delivery, everything is structured. Nothing is left to chance by a random teacher. You have to go through a rigorous orientation before you can teach in that program or deliver that curriculum. All the students jumped at least 1 to 3 grade levels over that period of time. So it tells us that our students can achieve, they're brilliant, but there's something wrong in day school that's compromising their ability to perform, right? So we're still working with them to implement a post-COVID iteration of that model, because we want to demonstrate to the school boards that these students are capable of learning. They can learn if they're provided and afforded the right systems to do so, the right infrastructure to do so. So that was definitely a success story, and it was quite enlightening as relates to best practice and ways of engaging students.
Thank you for sharing on that. Camesha, the same question for you. Any innovative ways or models that you're aware of that have really helped to build capacity for students since the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, at the Reading Partnership, prior to the pandemic, all of our programs were delivered in person. And so we had to figure out really quickly how are we going to do this thing online. And so, from the summer of 2020, we pivoted and started delivering the Reading Partnership for Parents program online live via Zoom with contactless pickup for our lit kits. So families that are enrolled in a Reading Partnership for Parents program, they actually get all of the resources and tools that they need to jumpstart their child's reading, the flashcards, the books, the activity templates. And so we had them had those kits either picked up or delivered, and delivered the program live via Zoom. But we still realized that there are some families that still can't access the program in person. Sometimes it's a challenge with shifting schedules. You have, mom might be available this week, Wednesday at 5 for program, but next week there's a shift change, and so she's unavailable. And so for a 10-week program, maybe, mom can only attend 4 out of the 10 sessions. So how do we think about the challenge that having programs at specific times or specific locations, the challenges that presents to families, and figure out how do we program around it. And so we decided that the Reading Partnership for Parents program needed to be also an asynchronous program. And so we worked on developing that, and actually launched it last spring with 50 families, giving them access to the content through a learning content management system, developing the animations and the video content needed to make the program engaging on its own online, and then just boom, 50 families go through that, test it and tell us what you think. We paid a cohort of families, 10 families, to be our focus group, to check in with us once a week as they move through the program on their own. Check in with us once a week and just tell us what challenges, what things do we need to change or shift. And we paid them for their feedback. And so we're working to take that asynchronous version of the program. So all a family needs is access, like their login to, it's called RPOD, Reading Program on Demand. They just need a username and password and the lit kit, and they're able to move through the program on their own time and at their own pace. And so we're working to develop that even more. And so that we'll be launching RPOD 2.0 by next year. So that's one of the innovative things that we did during the pandemic.
Thank you for sharing. Shakara, this next question is for you. What could be done to enhance the current education models to provide safe, nonviolent, inclusive, and effective learning environments for all students that really aligns with the sustainable development goal?
Yeah, no, I was actually just going to pick up on something that Camesha just said, because I actually think that that's another great area that we've now walked into. So there is an intersectional lens that we can lend to this, or we can sort of have this conversation in, and it's the learner is meeting the learner where they are with the skill sets that they currently have, and making sure that it's an asset-based model that we're using when we're deciding on what programs to put in front of them. So it's not about what are your deficits, but rather how do I strengthen who you are as a person to ensure that that capacity is built through this confidence lens. So one of the things that I think I'm seeing, or that I'd like to see sort of moved as we create models, is one that looks at the student as not this collection of classes, but rather we build a design of what is the type of skill set that this individual needs to meet their community, their personal and professional goals that we can support. So one of the programs that I've worked on is with Future Design Schools, and they've developed the profile of a student. And it looks at 37 factors that each student should, as they graduate or as they leave the education system, have some capacity or some sort of competency in. And so when you look at, say, for example, a math competency, while math is lovely, and I think we should absolutely have really strong capacity within math, understanding that to get to that math competency, that actually can show up in every single component of the student's life. It doesn't have to live just within a math class. It could be in home ec, it could be in reading, there's multiple ways we can get at it. And so how do we ensure that the student is at the center of what we're building? And then the other work that we've been doing around it is we've really been starting to look at what are the neurodivergent ways that learners are coming to the school. So how do we identify the best capacity and resources? So at one of the programs that we run, and it's specific to Nova Scotia, so I mean, I'm happy to share more about the details about it, but one of the programs we run actually looks at having all of our material in not only various languages, but it's also offered in Braille. It's also offered through a resource teacher that comes and helps with any sort of neurodivergent experiences. And so when you were building out programming, making sure that truly the student and all of the success markers are at the center of those programs is truly how you're going to get to that inclusive education structure.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing on that. And we'll go to you, to Devon, same question.
Yeah, I think as it relates to educational models and structures, I would like to see a greater level of coordination as it relates to infrastructure being created, say at the ministry level, and or just acknowledging the fact that we have to do more to accommodate the attrition, the attrition of Black students. So at the ministry level, I would like to see a more comprehensive strategy in place that we can disseminate throughout communities, because I think folks are doing work in silo, but the fact remains that across the system, Black students are grossly underachieving, right? For whatever those reasons are. So the initiatives that we're piloting, they're great, but I would like to see the ministry acknowledge the fact that we have this reality in community. You can't have, any business with a 40, 50, 60% attrition rate, a failure rate, and it continue to exist the way it does, and they continue to operate like everything is okay. Everything is not okay if we have such a large number of students who are grossly underachieving. So at the ministry level, for example, there's no Black department to really address what's taking place with Black students. There's no strategy in place as it relates to what's taking place with Black students. There is no, there's an Aboriginal department at the Ministry of Education in Ontario, but there isn't one for Black students. Like, to me, that's the tragedy within itself. Yes, so we have brilliant people doing work in community, but the piece around disorganization, the lack of coordination, I think it's imperative and must be addressed. So this isn't work that we should be doing in silo. We should have the ability to hold the ministry accountable as it relates to what's taking place with Black students. So yes, we're doing brilliant work in our respective communities, but it needs to be coordinated, centralized, streamlined, so we can address this system-wide issue or the systemic issue around Black students' attrition and Black student underachievement. Because Black kids who underachieve, they're going to Bay Street to get job on the stock floor. Those kids are. The outcomes for all of us is tragic, to say the least. So I think it's imperative that, we start advocating around systemic educational change, so we can put the appropriate infrastructure in place and we can hold people accountable. Like, these are children, these are a community. Malcolm said it best: only a fool will let his enemy educate his children. And the fact is that our kids are failing, and we need to do something about that.
Absolutely. As an extension to that, can you share some examples of collaboration within the various levels of government or community stakeholders, even the private sector, how that, can go with to help the education advancement for Black children and youth? Some examples specifically.
Yeah, so I spoke earlier about the partnership with Spirit of Math. The irony is Spirit of Math is a private entity. So because they're a private entity, and they have 100% success rate, juxtaposed to a 17% success rate of Black students, the ministry won't work with them, right? Does that make any sense? Of course it doesn't make sense. So the fact is, that's one example of a partnership with a private entity that we mobilized, we coordinated with. They accommodated hundreds of our students over a period of time to conduct longitudinal research to address what's taking place and see what we could build, and to see if this program would change the trajectory of Black students, and significantly did. So that's one example. The second example is working. This is in process or in progress. Working with Victor back in 2012, we started a transitional school. So what the transitional school was, it was an entity for students coming out of custody, right? So the transitional school that will be hosting there at YAAACE at 45 North Inch, we would accommodate students coming out of custody and accommodate them in a triaging capacity before they transition back to their achievement. In addition to that, we'll ensure that they transition into a school. They're not walking into a school on their own. They're walking in with support, social work support. They're walking in with a school board quadrant administrator who can say, will ensure that a principal is not going to say, where are you coming from? Or you're in detention? No, try the school across the street or try the school down the road. That's not going to take place. Better yet, the design of the program is our staff will connect with those young people when they're in custody before they even transition back to community as part of the triage. And so we're working on that with the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, the Youth Justice Division, the school board, TDSB and TCDSB. We occupy a TCDSB space, despite the fact that we primarily accommodate TDSB students, and both are contributing resources to this initiative.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, and I saw it in the chat. Yes, there was one location at Redemption, but there was also another location at 116 Industry. And the program was an amazing success. Recidivism rate is close to 75% for that group. I think we had 2 young people who breached. Was a 4% recidivism rate based on the fact that they were out past their curfew. So it spoke to the efficacy of the program, and it spoke to the significance of ensuring that young people aren't again back in the criminal justice system. So that program was a resounding success, despite the fact that it was just discarded by the school board. So we're trying to resurrect, we're in the process of bringing it back to life, and we can't wait to get it started.
Thank you for that. Definitely, if there's any links to share that people can follow along, please do drop it in the chat. We appreciate that. And this question is for you, Camesha. We're gonna go back because I know we lost you for a bit. What can be done to enhance current education models to make them, provide a safe space and be more inclusive, to provide an effective learning environment for all students? And do you have any specific examples of what that can look like?
Yeah, I think that acknowledging that there's an issue is number one. Like, we have governments that talk about increasing graduation rates and really being proud of the graduation rates across Ontario. And then when you look at specific communities, like the ones that the Reading Partnership focuses on, the Kingston, Galloway, Orton Park community, what does the graduation rate look like in that particular community? I think one of my biggest challenges is that from the onset of a child's learning in kindergarten, the school board and the ministry understands and knows exactly which kids are going to struggle to meet provincial standards in grade 3 based on the assessments that they do in kindergarten. So there are these standardized assessments that are in place. In kindergarten, it's the EDI, the early development instrument. We can understand and make projections for which kids are going to struggle to make to meet provincial standards in grade 3, yet still no intervention. Understand that there's an issue, but we're really not acknowledging it, and we're not taking action. And so you have, again, the work that I do in Kingston, Galloway, when we started, 49% of kids in grade 3 were not meeting the provincial standards for reading. And in some schools in that community, it was high as 60%. So they're taking the standardized tests in grade 3, but we understood that 60% of them in kindergarten were going to be there, and we did nothing about it, absolutely nothing. And the interventions that are in place, so for example, there's the reading recovery programs for kids in grade 1, but not every school has a reading recovery teacher. So they have this very structured model for how they intervene that is not expansive enough, or the funding that's needed to actually make that intervention impactful is not there. So you'll have a school with 60% of kids in grade 1 that need that one-to-one support, but can't get it because only one reading recovery teacher is assigned to that school. And reading recovery teacher, there's a cap on the number of kids that they can work with within the year. So how do you even go about choosing which kids get access to the intervention and which kids don't. Like, how do you even go about making that decision? And so I think that, like, if we understand the problem, we need interventions in place that ensure that kids do not transition from kindergarten to grade 3 without the skills needed to be successful. You have a government right now that's investing in tutoring, right? Because as a result of the pandemic, parents are getting access to tutoring supports. It's not well known in every community. And so not all families are getting access to this, right? Particularly Black families. And so it's an intervention that we need, right? Like, and as far as I know right now, I heard that funding program is not being extended past March 31st. So the access to this tutoring that parents had is no longer, right? And we know that in Black communities where there are low-income families, if I have to choose between putting food on the table or paying for my kids to get support from a tutor, what am I going to, I'm going to put food on the table, right? So tutoring programs and services should be free to low-income families. It's a no-brainer. Like in classrooms where 49% of kids need one-to-one support, it is impossible for one teacher to address or support all of those kids. So, and we educators know this, right? Like administrators know this, yet nothing is being done because there is an acceptable rate of failure. Like they're okay with a certain number of children failing, especially when they look like us. And so, it's unacceptable. And, you know, to Devon's point, this is where the advocacy needs to be. Like it's not right, you know, it's not right. So
it's interesting you say about the recovery, the reading recovery, because in Nova Scotia, we've actually moved away from reading recovery. And so for the P to 3, there's now a literacy strategy that's more they're intervening in any of the students that they're needing supports. They assume that each classroom needs at least 2 to 3 individuals just focus on reading literacy in addition to the teacher. But where Nova Scotia is struggling to meet outcomes as it relates to racialized and Black students is that the support needs to go beyond just the classroom, and it has to move into community. It has to be that like school to community bridge that is like, I'm not suggesting that parents need to walk home with the curriculum, but there needs to be that like whatever is being like taught in the classroom or explored in the classroom, that the community also has the mechanisms to help reinforce it. One of the professors or the teachers that I've worked with, she actually started a read from home program with her students. So she would have an open night where she would read to her students in lieu of parents reading to their students. So you could just bring your kids online and she would read to them. And this was met by huge controversy because it's like, well, you know, should you be reading to kids outside of hours because it's not a part of your teaching arrangement? The union doesn't want you doing it. But in reality, like without this teacher extending that reading time with the students, they actually don't get it. So I think whatever we build, I like the idea that it's led by government, but I think that it has to be completely supported and endorsed by a community, whether it's through public partnerships or private-public partnerships, fostering that, but I do think it has to live in community.
Absolutely. As an extension to what you've already said, Shakara, as you know, education attainment has always been a pressing need in the community. What do you feel we can do as Black parents and the extension of, you know, the community, as you said?
So one of the things that I really have been advocating for is access and the removal of barriers around helping parents support their learners on their journey. And so we've have it's an athletic team here, and we've been doing some work with them around sort of math outcomes and reading outcomes. And what was really interesting is that their parents wanted to be a part of that experience. But of course, whatever barriers prevented it. And so what I think as parents, we need to be the most vocal about how we get support, and we must not back down in allowing educators, as well-meaning as they are, to deter us from what we know our kids and our students need. So when we work with parents and communities, we're asking them to be our eyes and help us provide pathways for their students based on what they see. And most of the programming that we develop for our students is led with parental support and parental involvement in how we develop that. So we are a not-for-profit organization, and that is our role. As it relates to the school system, I think when we find champions in the school who supports that journey for students, where it's a personalized experience for a student, those are the places where we have the most success. It's educators who are committed to that student's experience of what success looks like. So if your student needs math support, it doesn't matter if it's, math support that's developed by Imhotep here at Dalhousie, or if it's a tutor that's at the Black Cultural Center. For us, we are motivated to get that student the support wherever it's appropriate and where the student feels the most comfortable taking that support from.
Thank you so much. Devon, what do you think that Black parents in the community needs to do to help?
Parents, or just them being aware of how the system works or how it operates, I think is critical. For example, there's a system of promoting or transferring students that's in place. So if I'm in grade 1, and to Camesha's point around the EDI, if I'm in grade 1 or kindergarten grade 1, and if I don't do well, they're going to transfer me, right? So when you transfer a student, it means that they have not met the requirement of that grade level, but I'm going to move them ahead despite the fact that they have not met that requirement. So I'm leaving grade 1, and I'm going to go to grade 2. But the fact is that I have not met the requirement at grade 1. And the way the curriculum is designed, they build on what you've acquired or achieved in the previous grade. So if you're struggling in grade 1 and you then get transferred as opposed to being promoted to grade 2 is going to be a problem, because you have not met the basic requirement at the grade 1 level to achieve at the grade 2 level. So our proposal to the boards are, we want to identify all the kids who you're transferring as opposed to being promoted, who are struggling. We want to identify each and every single last one of those students so we can provide them with that level of remedial support. And to Shakara's point, we want to control the narrative, and we want to make sure that in partnership with you, the school boards and the ministry, we are closing that gap and we're building capacity in those students.
Right. And they'll walk away from that doing nothing. In the same way that if I, go to a professional development conference, I leave, overwhelmed, a lot of information, a lot of good things that I should do and implement, but where do I start? And so through the Reading Partnership for Parents program, we're walking parents step by step through the process of teaching their kids to read. We're giving it to them bite size, creating an environment for them to practice, for us to be, to model and then step back and be the guides on the side that watch them as they interact with their child, giving them an opportunity to continue to practice at home, and then come back to us and talk about it. How did you do? Did you get to the lessons? You didn't do it this week. What happened? Time, you didn't have the time. How do we carve out the time? On the walk to school, what can you do? During when you're preparing the meal, what can you do? During bath time, what can you do, right? To incorporate some of these things into the learning. And a lot of parents walk away from the program talking about, the fact that they were able to develop patience, that they now understand how their child learns, that they understand that learning needs to be fun, right? So I really feel like parents want to support their children. They just need the support to do that, right? We have to teach them and support them in supporting their children so that they could be more active and engaged.
Thank you so much. Camesha, this question is also for you. Is there any research that you're aware of that's being implemented to help to advance equity in education in Canada?
I mean, like the Ontario Human Rights Commission launched a report last year around this time called Right to Read that really talks about the way in which we've been going about teaching children to read and in the wrong way. And that's why we're seeing the outcomes and the results that we're seeing in schools, talking about the fact that teachers leave teachers' college unprepared to actually teach kids to read. And so this research is really putting pressure on school boards and the system to think about evidence-based models for actually teaching kids to read. Like as a teacher, I left teachers college having absolutely no clue where to start. And so, and this is a reality. It's the fact that I know how to teach a child to read and have a strategy and a model for doing that. That's professional development. That's my own interest, right? So we have teachers across classrooms across Ontario that do not know what the heck they're doing, right? And there are some kids that are in their classrooms that will still advance and do well because they have all of the support at home and they're in Kumon and they're in this after school program. And so they have a parent that was read to. And so they're reading to their children. And so they have an environment at home that allows them to strive whether or not what's supposed to be happening in the classroom is happening. And then you have kids that don't have that environment, right? And are coming in and really need to be in a classroom with a teacher that knows what they're doing so that they get the education that they need to be able to move on to the next grade, having the skills that they need to succeed. And it's not happening. So with this Ontario Human Rights report, school boards are having to look, dig deeper, and teacher education programs are having to try to figure out how they incorporate opportunities for teachers to actually learn how to teach kids to read and support early literacy. So I would say that that's some research that has recently come out. And then the Reading Partnership, we're actually engaging in some research in the spring across the country, talking to Black parents and understanding their experiences with teaching their children to read. Like what are they doing? What do they think they should be doing? Why aren't they doing what they should be doing? If that is a challenge, like if what they think they should be doing to teach their kids to read is something that they can't do, why? What are the barriers? Understanding that, and understanding that from a teacher's perspective as well. How do kids learn to read? How should parents be supporting them? Why aren't they supporting them in the ways? And I know that we're going to see that there is a huge misunderstanding between the expectations that teachers have for parents and what they should be doing and what parents are actually equipped and able to do, and the barriers that parents face in actually trying to do some of the things that teachers are expecting them to do. And hopefully we'll be able to, at the end of that research and talking to parents and communities across the country, is come to some recommendations that we can make to remove some of the barriers that Black parents face to supporting their children in the early years.
Thank you so much. And we'll go to you, Shakara. Any research that you're aware of that's being implemented to advance equity in education in Canada?
Well, I don't know about any that are currently ongoing, but I'm always drawn back to the Black Report. So the Black Report was a report commissioned by the Department of Education in here in Nova Scotia. It was written in 1994, 95. And what it found was, much of what we know today is true, right? Black learners are disadvantaged in a myriad of ways. Fast forward to 2017, they do another report and not much has changed. And so what I think with research, it's only as powerful as the actions that are taken outside of it. And I think one of the beautiful parts about what has happened since that initial report was completed is that there is a Office of African Nova Scotian, I can't remember the exact word, but it's CASE, the acronym is CASE here in Nova Scotia, and their job is to specifically focus on the Black learner. Where I think that the second report, the one that happened in 2017, has built on it. They realize that it's going to start, or the need for change needs to start, like Camesha said, earlier in the program. So you need to have teachers ingrained in how to teach Black learners. And in Nova Scotia specifically, this work is in specific communities, but it was also found that when you look at the needs of Black learners, it's also it's compounded when you combine the fact that if they're in a rural context. So Nova Scotia, our school boards are organized by communities, and so there's just the Halifax Regional School Board, but then there's a school board in every community. And so if you're a Black learner outside of Metro, you're even more disadvantaged. And so I think when we look at research, it is about truly trying to understand what is the best outcome for the students, given the support systems around. And the department has currently undergone anti-racism research right now, and looking at if Black learners are, systematically not meeting outcomes. What's happening in the school system? Is there opportunities for us to introduce Afrocentric learning models in the school that these students are actually participating in? And what's the feedback mechanism? So not waiting another, 20 years before we evaluate how successful these actions are, but doing sort of a yearly check-in to make sure that the students are reaching the outcomes based on models that are anchored in their cultural competencies as well. And so research to me is only useful if it has a desired action attached to it.
Absolutely, makes a lot of sense. Devon, the same question goes for you.
Yeah, the piece around research, I know and I spoke to this earlier, the research that we did with Spirit of Math was quite enlightening. The link is in the chat if you want to review or take a look at the report. Yeah, but research is absolutely important because it sheds it allows us to look and see and evaluate best practices. But I think to the next question, I'm going to jump to the next question. Before we start doing research, we have to better understand the data. We have to better understand the data set. And I know, for example, the TDSB collects data. They collect race-based data. They collect information, but that stuff is pretty much kept in-house. They almost never share those results with anyone because those results, they're quite scathing, to say the least. So they use the Learning Opportunity Index as a tool that speaks to risk. So they'll look at the income level of the parent, the educational achievement of the parent, the postal code of the student, and in using those data, they will look at a school in a particular community and gauge the amount of risk based on the demographic data of the parent, right, or of the student. So they will then assess that this is a vulnerable learner, just based on the number of check boxes as per the LOI. So then if you think about it logically, if students in particular communities are checking those boxes, you would assume that they then know that there's a level of intervention that should take place in those schools or in those communities. So the schools in Jenna Finch are high on the LOI, right? On the LOI, you don't want to have a high score, you want to have a low score, right? So the schools in this neighborhood, they're high on the LOI. But despite the fact that there's a significant number of schools in this neighborhood on the LOI, meaning that the schools, the students are at risk of failing, it's business as usual. They operate in the same way, right? So we're navigating a unionized space. Some classrooms, my co-presenters shared this earlier, some classrooms should have 2 teachers in them. They should have a full-time social worker in some of these buildings. Some classrooms should have 3 teachers in them, to be quite honest with you. That's how vulnerable these students are. So, you know, to Sister Shakira's point, if we're going to conduct research, or if we have tangible data that speaks to attrition and we don't attach an action to it, then what is the point of that research? So if we know that some of these schools have to look radically differently with the number of resources attached to them, the number of support attached to particular students, then if we're going to conduct research, we have to make sure that we're mindful of how we address the results. We can't hear that, oh, it's a unionized space, so we have to operate in a manner of equality. No, this is an issue of equity, just based on your need. We can't treat every community the same. We can't treat every learner the same. We have to make sure that we build robust intervention structures and strategies based on the need of students from particular communities. So that is what research is supposed to drive. That is what data is supposed to drive. But if then we're going to come across a unionized roadblock as it relates to making sure everything is equal and left the same, then we'll fix nothing. That is why when we have access to that data, we have to act accordingly, out of bounds, or out of the structure of school, to make sure that as community, we can address that work in a very equitable way.
Thank you so much. And we definitely have more to discuss on this topic, but we are going to be respectful of time. And so we will be having a part 2 to this discussion next month. But I want to go to closing thoughts, starting with Shakara, please.
Yeah, no, I think that we are, as a community, embarking on a very new, well, it's not new, it's the same, but it's just more expanded era with a student. So the learner is, upon graduation, that's always the measurement for me. So once they have graduated school, are they able to be contributing community members? Are they able to see themselves in, you know, meaningful work and, you know, supports their communities? And with the changing demographic and the changing world we live in, we are doing a complete disservice to our students to not really start to challenge some of the systems and the way that they perpetuate the type of students that our communities are able to produce. I'm not suggesting that there aren't brilliant students that come out of our communities, but I know that when one student has been left behind, that's too many.
Absolutely. We thank you for that. And I want to thank each and every one of our panelists for being here today. As I said, we're going to invite them back next month to extend this conversation a bit further. I want to thank everyone for coming out, and we're going to end this session the same way that we began, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also want to acknowledge our ancestors and those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stewards whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Once again, thank you everyone for coming out today.